They say every affair begins with a lie, but mine began with a funeral. It was raining the day we buried my father-in-law. I remember because the sky looked like wet concrete, and the kind of chill that gets into your bones clung to everyone like an accusation. Karen, my wife, stood next to me, her gloved hand trembling in mine, though her face stayed dry. Too dry, I thought at the time. Not a tear. But then again, the men had been more a shadow in our lives than a father, always disappearing into some workshop, some bottle, some silence. Even in death, he didn't leave much behind. Just a ramshackle house in New Jersey and a couple of old photographs in a dusty shoebox. I should have been focused on her that day, on comforting her, on standing beside her like a good husband does. Instead, I noticed her. The woman in the black coat with eyes too sharp for mourning. She stood apart from the others, hair dark as ink, lips that looked like they hadn't smiled in years. I watched her light a cigarette under the canopy of a maple tree, her hand cupping the flame with a practiced motion that felt almost cinematic. She caught me staring. I looked away. But later, at the wake, after the casseroles and the too loud laughter from people who didn't know how to grieve, she came to me. Uninvited, unannounced, and yet it felt like something inevitable. "You look like someone who needs a cigarette," she said. Her voice was low, like a secret spoken through a cracked door. I shook my head. "I quit 10 years ago." "That's a shame." She smiled. "I never did." And just like that, she walked away. No name. No small talk. Just that smug little smirk like she already knew how this story would end. 2 weeks passed. Life returned to its routines. Karen went back to teaching 3rd grade, I went back to the office. I'm a financial advisor in Montclair. Nothing glamorous. I spend my days talking men off financial cliffs and convincing newly divorced women that their alimony will, in fact, last them until retirement. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It pays for the mortgage, the SUV, the occasional vacation to Charleston or Sedona, where we pretend for a week that we're still in love. But she stayed in my head, the woman at the funeral. It was a Tuesday when I saw her again. I'd gone out for a late lunch at a bar not far from the office. Not the kind of place you take clients. The lights are too dim, the music's too loud, and the bartender knows how to make a Negroni without asking twice. I was halfway through mine when I looked up and saw her sitting at the far end of the bar, flipping through a paperback like she owned the place. She glanced up, caught me staring again. "I figured you'd come," she said, as if I'd been summoned. "You followed me?" "No," she sipped her drink. "But men like you always circle back." I should have left. I should have paid my tab and gone home to Karen and her quiet resentment and the half-eaten lasagna from Sunday night. But I didn't. I sat down next to the woman I didn't know but couldn't stop thinking about. Her name was Marissa. She was 34. Worked part-time at an art gallery in Soho and spent the rest of her time painting abstract portraits that no one bought. Her laugh was low, a little dirty. Her hands moved when she spoke, always sketching something invisible in the air. She asked me questions no one else ever asked, about regrets, about dreams I hadn't touched since my 20s, about the nights I couldn't sleep and why. We didn't sleep together that night. We just talked. But talking turned into texting. Texting turned into drinks. Drinks turned into nights. And nights turned into something dangerous. There's a moment, in every affair, when it stops feeling like a mistake and starts feeling like the only real thing in your life. For me, it was the night she showed me a painting. It was 3 weeks after we first met at the bar. She had a small loft in the East Village, exposed brick, creaky floors, the kind of place that smelled like turpentine and coffee grounds. I stood in the center of her studio while she pulled a dusty tarp off a canvas and said, "This one reminds me of you." It was abstract, just deep streaks of blue and black crashing into each other like a storm. But when I looked at it, I felt something tighten in my chest. Like someone had opened me up and painted what they found inside. She stepped behind me and whispered, "You look like a man who's drowning." I didn't argue. I kissed her instead. We slept together for the first time that night. I thought I was careful. I really did. I had burner apps, excuses, a separate credit card for anything that might leave a trail. I deleted texts, cleared call logs. I kept everything in its neat little compartment: work, home, her. but you can't split your life into thirds forever. Eventually, one corner starts to rot. Karen began asking questions. Small ones, at first. Why I was working late so often. Why I smelled like hotel soap. Why I was quieter during dinner, staring into my wine glass like it held answers. Then came the fights. The suspicion. The way she started checking my phone when she thought I wasn't looking. One night, she asked, "Is there someone else?" I said no. She believed me. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe she just didn't want to know. And then came the night everything shifted. It was a Friday. Marissa and I had gotten a room at the Park South Hotel, nothing fancy, but private. We ordered room service, watched a French film we didn't understand, and made love until my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I checked it. Just instinct. It was Karen. A text, "Are you with her now?" I stared at the screen, my stomach dropping through the mattress. Before I could reply, Marissa reached for my phone. "You didn't tell me she knew," she said, voice flat. "She doesn't. I mean, she suspects, but..." "She texted you." "That's not suspecting. That's knowing." I sat up. "I'll handle it." Marissa didn't say anything for a moment. Then, quietly, she said, "What's her maiden name?" I blinked. "Why?" "Just tell me." "Walker. Karen Walker." "Why?" Marissa stood up slowly, like the weight of something unspeakable had just settled on her shoulders. She walked to the window, stared out into the night like she was trying to find something in the dark. Then, softly, so softly I almost didn't hear it, she said, "That was my mother's name too." I sat there, heart pounding in my ears. "What are you talking about?" She turned, and in that moment, her face looked like a stranger's. Like someone I'd never seen before. My mother's name was Angela Walker. She had a sister. I never met her. She left when I was a baby. Moved to Jersey. We lost touch. Her name was Karen. I stared at her. No. That's not possible. But even as I said it, I knew. I knew. Because I'd seen that photo once, years ago. A little girl with a crooked smile and eyes just like Marissa's, sitting on Karen's lap. I'd thought nothing of it then. I hadn't recognized her. But now I couldn't unsee it. I had taken a mistress. And she was my wife's cousin. I didn't sleep that night. After Marissa told me who she was, or might be, we just sat there in silence, both of us too stunned to move, too afraid to ask the next question. The air in the room changed. Heavier. Thicker. Like it had stopped being oxygen and turned into something that clung to your throat. I left just after 2 a.m., shirt half-buttoned, tie hanging loose around my neck like a noose. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, passed the night clerk without making eye contact, and drove through empty streets like a fugitive. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Cousins. She said she and Karen were cousins. It couldn't be real. Could it? I got home just before 3. The house was dark except for the little light Karen always leaves on over the stove, a habit from her mother. The same mother who never spoke of siblings, who'd always deflected when I asked about her childhood. Not much to tell, she'd say. Small town. Messy family. I used to think it was just modesty. Now I knew better. I walked quietly down the hall and stopped outside the bedroom door. I could hear the low buzz of the white noise machine she used to help her sleep. That soft mechanical hum that had once felt like comfort now sounded like a barrier I couldn't cross. I didn't go in. I slept, or pretended to sleep, on the couch, the cushions digging into my back like punishment. The next morning, she didn't say anything about where I'd been. She made coffee. Scrambled eggs. Kissed me lightly on the cheek like it was any other Saturday morning. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, watching her stir oat milk into her coffee, wondering how many lies could sit between two people without breaking the furniture. I needed to know the truth. And I couldn't ask her. Not yet. So I drove to the one place I hadn't been since the funeral, her father's house. The place was still empty. The lawn had grown wild. The porch sagged like it was grieving, and a yellowing notice from the town was taped to the front door warning of imminent code violations. I still had the key on my ring. Karen had insisted we keep it, just in case. Inside, it smelled like old wood, dust, and a hint of mildew. Everything was exactly where we'd left it after the wake: take-out containers in the trash, framed photos stacked in boxes, the couch cushion still missing a button. I went straight for the attic. Karen had told me once, years ago, that her father kept everything: photos, letters, cards from people he didn't even talk to anymore. She'd rolled her eyes when she said it. The man's allergic to throwing things away. In the attic, I found what I was looking for. An old cedar chest near the far wall, locked with a rusted latch that popped open with a little force. Inside, envelopes tied with string, old journals, family photos. And a single photograph that made my stomach turn. It was labeled Thanksgiving 1991. A little girl, Marissa, unmistakably her even then, sitting on the lap of a woman I didn't recognize, and next to them, Karen. Younger. Smiling. Arm draped casually over the back of the couch. Family. On the back of the photo, in faded ink, Angela, Karen and little Riss. There it was. In handwriting. In black and white. Truth. I drove to the park. I don't know why. I just needed air. Needed somewhere that didn't smell like betrayal and dust. I sat on a bench under an elm tree, staring at kids running through a sprinkler across the field, and wondered what kind of man accidentally sleeps with his wife's cousin. I thought about calling Marissa. Telling her I'd found proof. But I didn't. Instead, I called my brother, Nate. He answered on the third ring. Yo. You ever think your life was one thing, and then suddenly, I paused. Suddenly, you realize you've been the only one not in on the joke. There was silence on the other end for a second. Then, are you drunk? No. Hi. No. Then you're scaring the shit out of me, man. What happened? I think I made a mistake. Big one. I laughed, bitter. Nuclear. That night, I went home and cooked dinner. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted things to feel normal. Maybe I was trying to earn points I'd already spent. Karen came in just as I was chopping basil. She raised an eyebrow. What's all this? Just figured we could eat in for once. She smiled, a little guarded. Everything okay? I kissed her on the forehead. Yeah. Just tired of takeout. We ate on the back deck, string lights glowing faintly above us, crickets chirping like they hadn't gotten the memo that everything was falling apart. We talked about her class, about one of the kids who couldn't stop eating glue. We laughed. It felt almost real. Until she set her wine glass down and said, casually, "You never did tell me where you were last night." I looked at her. The glassy smile. The sharpness behind it. I had a lot on my mind, I said. Went for a drive. Her eyes narrowed. All night. I shrugged. I ended up at a bar. Had a few too many. Slept it off in the car. She stared at me for a beat longer than she needed to. Then she stood. Picked up her plate. You're not a very good liar, you know that. I didn't answer. The next day, Marissa texted me. We need to talk. In person. I told her to meet me at the pier in Hoboken. Neutral ground. Public. No hotel room, no shadows. When she arrived, her face was different. Not just the lack of makeup or the tired eyes, there was something harder about her. Like she'd taken whatever shock she'd felt and sharpened it into a weapon. You were right, I said. It's real. You and Karen, your family. She nodded once. I figured. I looked her up. Old photos. Records. It all fits. I waited for the anger. For the scream. For the slap. Instead, she said, "You're not the first man I've slept with who had secrets. But this," she looked out over the water. "This is a new one." I didn't know, I said. I know. I swear. I said I know. Silence stretched between us, filled only by the lapping of waves against the dock. Finally, she said, "You think she knows who I am?" I hesitated. "I don't think so. She's never mentioned you. Not once." "That doesn't mean she forgot me." Her voice was colder now. "It might mean she chose to forget." That night, back home, I opened a bottle of scotch I'd been saving for something good. Instead, I poured a double and stood in the dark kitchen, watching the rain hit the window. Karen walked in behind me, barefoot. Quiet. She didn't say anything. She just handed me her phone. I looked down. It was open to a photo album. And there she was, Angela. Younger. Smiling. Holding a baby in her arms. Karen's voice was almost a whisper. "You know what I remember about her the most?" I didn't move. She left without saying goodbye. She stepped closer. Just one day, gone. My mom told me she'd run off. That she didn't want to be a mother. That we shouldn't talk about her. She reached out, took the phone back. I used to look for her face in crowds. I turned to face her. "You never told me." Karen looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen in years. Not angry. Not sad. Just tired. "I told you everything I thought I could survive saying. I used to believe that the worst thing you could do in a marriage was cheat. That was the line. The boundary. Cross it, and you destroy everything. But I was wrong. It's not the betrayal that ruins you, it's the silence afterward. The slow, rotting space where the truth sits unspoken between two people who once loved each other." After Karen showed me that photo, her holding her phone like it weighed 100 pounds, something cracked between us. Not a break. Not yet. Just the kind of crack you feel in old foundation when the weather shifts. I tried to speak, to say something that would pull us back into whatever safe place we used to live in. But she just turned away. She went upstairs without another word. I didn't follow. The next morning, I woke to the smell of toast and eggs. For a second, I let myself believe it was a good sign, some fragile gesture toward normalcy. I came downstairs in sweats, hoping to pretend too. Karen was already dressed. Hair back in a low bun, her professional face on like armor. "There's coffee," she said, not looking at me. "Thanks." She set a plate in front of me like I was a guest. Or a stranger. I tried. "About last night." "Don't," she said, sharp but flat. "Not now." I wanted to ask when, but I didn't. I just sat in that kitchen with the eggs going cold and the sound of her footsteps upstairs slicing through me. I went to work and stared at spreadsheets for 5 hours, accomplishing nothing. Every number blurred into another. I had 3 voicemails from clients and 1 from my assistant, Emily, reminding me that the quarterly meeting was in 2 days. I nodded at it like she could hear me. Then Marissa texted. I went to my mother's storage unit. That hit me like a slap. I called her immediately. Why? I needed to know who she was before she disappeared. And if Karen erased me, or if it was something worse. She sounded different. Tired, but clearer. More dangerous. "What did you find?" "A lot of junk. And a box. Letters. Photos. A journal." I sat forward in my desk chair. She wrote about Karen. She wrote about everything. We met that night at her place. I parked 2 blocks away, like I always did. Habit. Guilt. Survival instinct. She had the journal on the table when I walked in, soft brown leather, fraying at the corners, a small metal clasp. She handed it to me wordlessly and poured us both wine. Red. Heavy. I opened to a random page. Karen doesn't understand. She was always the golden one. I was the screw-up. The girl who couldn't keep a job, who got pregnant at 19 and ruined Thanksgiving. She didn't want to be an aunt. She wanted to be perfect. And perfect doesn't come with baggage like me. I kept reading. Mom made her choose. She chose herself. She always does. And now I'm the ghost at their table. I looked up. Jesus. Marissa was curled into the corner of her couch, legs crossed under her. She looked at me with a mixture of defiance and sadness. There are more. I sent Karen a picture of Marissa on her 4th birthday. I never heard back. No card. No call. Nothing. It was like we didn't exist. She erased us. That's what hurts the most, not that she left, but that she pretended we were never there. I closed the journal. And I saw it, then, how deep the damage went. How long this silence had been curated, layer after layer, like sediment over a body no one wanted to dig up. Karen hadn't just forgotten her past. She'd buried it. On purpose. And me? I'd stumbled into the grave and made love to the ghost. Marissa lit a cigarette and opened the window. The night air rolled in, soft and sticky. Do you hate her now? She asked. The question caught me off guard. I don't know what I feel. She turned to look at me, her face half in shadow. You should. I shook my head. She was a kid when it happened. She was scared. Influenced. She made a choice. So did I said, sharper than I meant to. Marissa didn't flinch. Yeah. You did. We sat in silence, two people who had unraveled something irreversible, something ancient and poisonous that neither of us had truly understood when we crossed the line. I stood. I should go. Yeah. I hesitated in the doorway. Do you want to stop? I asked. She blinked. Us. I nodded. She looked at me like I'd asked her to decide the ending to a story she didn't even want to be in. I don't know, she said. I don't think we're finished yet. I drove home under streetlights that felt like interrogation bulbs. When I walked into the house, it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that pulses in your ears. Karen was sitting in the living room. Lights off. Just her and a glass of something in the dark. I froze. She spoke without looking at me. Where were you? Out. With her. I didn't answer. She turned then, slowly, and I saw her face for the first time in that light, tired, drawn, hollowed out by something deeper than betrayal. I read the journal, she said. I blinked. How? She sent me pictures of a few pages. Said if I wanted the rest, I could come get it myself. I lowered myself into the chair opposite her. The room felt like a courtroom. She was both judge and jury. You lied to me for months, she said. I know. And before that, you lied by omission for years. About what you really wanted. About who you really were. I didn't argue. What was the point? She was my cousin, Karen said, voice breaking slightly. She was a pain in the ass. Wild. Impulsive. She wore glitter eyeliner to my grandmother's funeral. But she was mine. And I lost her. She left. She left because our mother made her feel like she had no choice. And I let it happen. She looked up at me. And now you've brought her back into my life, like a grenade. Tears shimmered in her eyes but didn't fall. I don't know if I can forgive either of you, she said. I don't expect you to. We sat there in silence, like two survivors in the wreckage of a house that was still burning. Then Karen said something that shook me. She asked me to meet her. I stiffened. When? Tomorrow. Are you going to? She nodded slowly. I have to. If I don't, she'll haunt me for the rest of my life. That night, we didn't speak again. We didn't sleep in the same bed. I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, imagining two women, linked by blood, separated by silence, sitting across from each other for the first time in decades. What would they say? What would they do if they discovered they were in love with the same man? And what would I be left with? A broken marriage. A broken affair. And the truth. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. I sat in my car outside the coffee shop they'd chosen, an airy place on the corner of 9th and Washington in Hoboken, all reclaimed wood and Edison bulbs, the kind of place where people pretend their lives are more put together than they are. I wasn't supposed to be there. Karen didn't tell me where they were meeting, but I knew. I know her too well. It's the same place she always chooses when something feels too big for her to carry alone. Birthdays. Breakups. That one fight with her sister where she cried into a matcha latte for 2 hours. I waited in the car with the engine off, watching through the rain-speckled windshield as the two women who had reshaped my entire world stepped into frame. Karen got there first. Hair down. No makeup. Black turtleneck, coat folded over her arm. She looked like herself and not herself, like someone trying to remember who she used to be before everything changed. Marissa came 3 minutes later. She wore a gray sweater and jeans, no jewelry, no lipstick, none of the fire that usually surrounded her like a shield. She looked like she was walking into a funeral. Maybe she was. They didn't hug. Karen stood when she saw her, but her arms stayed close to her sides. They stared at each other for a second, two women with the same eyes, the same sharp cheekbones, the same unspoken history, and then sat down across from each other like it was a negotiation. I felt like a voyeur. A coward. But I stayed. I had to know what they would say. They talked for almost an hour. I couldn't hear them. Couldn't read their lips through the window glare. But I didn't need sound. The body language said enough. At first, Karen leaned back. Arms crossed. Guard up. Marissa spoke with small hand movements, measured. Then Karen said something and leaned forward. Marissa's eyes flicked away. A pause. Then both women sat very still. I imagined truths dropping between them like lead weights. At one point, Karen wiped at her eyes. At another, Marissa stood like she might walk out, then sat back down. Whatever was being said, it wasn't easy. It wasn't safe. It was real. And I had no idea how to prepare for the fallout. That night, Karen came home after dark. I heard the door shut softly, heard the jingle of her keys dropped in the ceramic dish by the hallway mirror. I didn't go out to meet her. I waited. She found me in the living room. I looked up at her, expecting rage, grief, exhaustion. I got all three. But more than that, I saw clarity. I saw her, she said, as if I didn't already know. How did it go? Karen let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. It was biblical. I waited. She told me about the letter she sent. The birthdays. The photos. How my mother made her feel like garbage. Like a stain. I didn't know. She didn't want you to. She told me she loved me. As a sister. As a friend. And that she hated me, too. For leaving her behind. For forgetting. And what did you say? Karen looked down at her hands. I told her I was sorry. I stood, suddenly desperate to be closer to her. That matters. She looked up at me. Does it? Yes. Because it doesn't feel like enough. I reached out, but she stepped back. There's something else, she said. My stomach tightened. She told me about you. Silence. She told me she didn't know at first. That you were just someone she met. That it was fun. A mistake. But the second she saw my picture in the house, she knew. And she didn't stop. I closed my eyes. Karen. She said she wanted to hurt me, she said, her voice trembling. She wanted to see if she could. And the worst part is, she did. I reached for her. I didn't know. I believe you, she said. But that doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. We stood there, two people divided by a war we hadn't meant to start, one we didn't even understand until the bodies started showing up. Then she said something I'll never forget. I don't know if I can forgive you. But I also don't know if I want to live without trying. It was a thread. A fragile one. And I held onto it like it was the only thing keeping me from drowning. The next few days passed like walking through fog. Karen stayed distant, but not cruel. We talked about bills, groceries, her students. But underneath every word was a fault line. The tiniest pressure might split everything open again. I didn't see Marissa. But I thought about her constantly. About what she'd done. About what I had. And then came the envelope. It arrived on a Thursday. No return address. Just my name in black ink. Inside, a single photo and a handwritten note. The photo was of Marissa, age 6, maybe 7, sitting on a swing. Next to her, Karen, no older than 10. They were smiling. Real smiles. Pure. Innocent. The note was short. This is who we were. Before the silence. Before the shame. Before you. I didn't know what to do with it. I showed it to Karen. She looked at it for a long time. She kept this, she whispered. She wanted you to remember. Karen traced her finger over the edge of the photo. I don't know what I want anymore, she said. Neither did I. A week passed. Then another. Karen went to stay with her sister in Pennsylvania for space. I didn't fight it. I let her go. She needed room to think. To breathe. I spent my nights pacing the house, drinking too much, staring at the blank spot on the wall where we used to hang wedding photos. Then Marissa called. I need to see you, she said. My throat tightened. Why? Because you're still part of this. Whether you like it or not. I met her at Liberty State Park. The air was cold. Clean. The sky over Manhattan bruised with sunset. She wore a long coat. Hair loose. No smile. I'm leaving, she said. Moving to Portland. Job offer. Fresh start. I didn't say anything. She continued. I told Karen I was going. She said she was glad. That she hoped we'd both grow the hell up. I laughed, even though it wasn't funny. Why did you want to see me? I asked. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe she didn't. Because I wanted to say goodbye. That's it. No, her voice dropped. Because even after everything, I still wonder who we were when it wasn't about revenge. When it felt real. I swallowed. It was real. Some of it. We stood in silence. She turned to leave. And then paused. I think she'll come back to you, she said. I don't deserve that. No. You don't. She smiled, soft, sad. Neither do I. She left the next morning. Karen came home the day after that. She didn't say where we stood. But she unpacked her bag. She sat next to me on the couch. And she held my hand. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. There are moments that feel quiet on the outside but scream on the inside. The kind of moments where nothing dramatic happens, no slammed doors, no shouted words, no sobbing confessions, but you feel the earth tilt beneath you anyway. That's what life became after Marissa left and Karen came back. It was quiet. Too quiet. We moved through the house like actors in a scene we didn't rehearse. We made coffee. Folded laundry. Passed each other in the hallway with polite, aching silence. No accusations. No apologies. Just space. And wait. There was no more pretending we didn't know what we knew. There was only the question neither of us had asked yet. Now what? One Saturday morning, Karen surprised me. She asked if I wanted to go for a drive. No plan. Just get in the car and go. I said yes without thinking. She drove. Not fast, but with a kind of purpose, like she was following some internal map I couldn't read. We ended up 2 hours north, in a small town tucked along the Hudson, all antique stores and crooked sidewalks. We parked near a diner with red vinyl booths and a flickering neon sign that said eat. She hadn't said a word the entire ride. Over lunch, she finally spoke. Do you remember that fall when we first moved in together? The apartment in Jersey City. I nodded. The tiny one with the squeaky pipes. And the mouse that kept showing up under the stove, she added. I smiled. I pretended I didn't see it so you wouldn't make me deal with it. She laughed, softly. I knew. I just let you pretend. We fell into a memory like it was a warm coat we hadn't worn in years. Then she looked down at her coffee and said, that was the last time I felt completely safe. The words landed hard. I didn't mean to take that away from you, I said. She didn't look up. But you did. We paid the bill and walked along the river after, neither of us saying much. The wind had that early November bite to it, sharp, honest. Karen slipped her arm through mine without asking, and we walked like that, slowly, like people who used to love each other and weren't sure what came next. When we got home, I found the journal again. Marissa's mother's journal, the one Marissa had shown me weeks ago, the one Karen had read pieces of but hadn't spoken about since. I'd tucked it into the back of my closet, like I was afraid of what else it might say. But now, it felt like a question that still needed answering. Karen sat across from me as I opened it. We read it together, from the beginning this time. It was all there, raw, messy, painful. The loneliness. The resentment. The unspoken love. The complicated, shifting image of Karen as a teenager, torn between the version of herself her parents wanted and the one she'd left behind with Marissa. At one point, Karen reached for my hand and gripped it tight. She always thought I hated her, she whispered. But I was just afraid I wasn't good enough. That if I let her in, she'd see everything I was pretending to be. I didn't know what to say. There was nothing that could erase what had happened. But maybe understanding it, really seeing it, was a kind of beginning. Then we found a letter tucked into the back cover. Not a journal entry. A sealed envelope addressed to Karen. Karen's hands shook as she opened it. I sat silently while she read. Tears welled in her eyes as she passed it to me. It said, Karen. If you ever find this, it means the silence is finally over. I don't know how much time has passed or how far apart we've drifted, but I hope you're still out there. I hope you've made a life you love. I know I wasn't easy. I know I made choices that scared everyone. But I never stopped loving you. You were my sister before the world told us we had to be anything else. I saw the way you looked at me when Mom said those things, when she made you pick a side. I don't blame you. Not really. But I want you to know I kept every picture. Every card. Even the ones I pretended I didn't care about. You were the part of the family I held onto, even when I told myself I didn't need any of it. I hope someday you forgive me. And I hope, somehow, you remember who we were before we learned how to forget each other. Love. Rachel. Karen didn't say much after we read it. She just sat there for a long time, her fingers folded around the envelope like it was the last piece of a puzzle she wasn't sure she wanted to finish. That night, she came to bed. No words. Just her body next to mine for the first time in weeks. We didn't touch. We didn't speak. But she didn't leave. And neither did I. The next morning, she woke me early. I want to go to her, she said. Marissa. Karen nodded. Before she's gone for good. There are things I didn't say. Things I need to. I sat up. Do you want me to come? She looked at me for a long time. No, she said. This is mine. She left that afternoon with a bag and the letter. I didn't hear from her for 2 days. When she finally called, her voice was calm. Steady. I saw her, she said. I waited. I gave her the letter. She cried. I cried. We yelled, a little. Then we sat on her porch and drank cheap wine and talked about when we were kids. About the time we tried to bury that Barbie doll in the backyard and accidentally dug up a dead squirrel. I laughed, even though I had no right to. She said she still dreams about us, before. And she asked me if I could ever be her family again. What did you say? Karen paused. I said yes. I didn't breathe for a moment. Then she added, but I told her that doesn't mean I'm ready to be yours. That hit harder than I expected. She continued, gently. I need time. And maybe space. Not forever. But for now. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I understand. I don't hate you, she said. That's not what this is. I know. I just need to figure out if I can ever feel safe again. And just like that, we hung up. Not an ending. Not yet. But the beginning of something else. That night, I sat in the living room by myself, holding the photo of Karen and Marissa on the swing. I thought about how fragile everything really is: love, memory, family. How easily it breaks when you look away. But I also thought about how they found their way back to each other. Through pain. Through lies. Through me. And somehow, they were rebuilding. Without me at the center. Maybe that's what love really is sometimes, stepping back and letting someone else heal in the way they need to. Even if it means losing them. Maybe that's the only way we survive each other. The house had never felt this quiet before. Not even during the worst fights, when Karen would go cold and withdraw into herself like a door slammed shut. Not even the nights I knew she was pretending to be asleep while I stared at the ceiling, trying to think of a way to fix something I didn't have the words for. Now, it was real silence. Heavy. Wide. A silence that no longer needed to prove anything. Karen had gone to stay with a friend upstate. Not her sister this time, someone I didn't know, someone outside the tangled web of our shared past. She didn't say how long she'd be gone. Only that she needed distance. That she couldn't think with me in the room. I didn't argue. Because when the person you love asks for space, you give it to them. Even when it feels like you're giving them permission to forget you. I kept living. Or at least, I went through the motions. Work was mechanical. The numbers, the calls, the fake enthusiasm for client meetings, it all became background noise, something I did so that I didn't have to be alone with myself 24 hours a day. But the truth crept in anyway. Usually at night. I'd wake up at 3:17 a.m. almost like clockwork, heart racing, breath shallow, the sheets tangled and damp with sweat. Sometimes it was a dream. Sometimes it was just the echo of something I hadn't faced yet. One night, I dreamed Karen was sitting at the foot of the bed, watching me. She didn't say anything. Just watched. Like she was trying to decide if I was still worth knowing. And I didn't blame her. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Marissa again. An email. Subject line, for whatever it's worth. There was no greeting. Just a short paragraph. I wanted to hate you. Honestly, I think part of me still does. Not just for what happened, but for the way it made me remember who I used to be. I built a life on being the one who got away. The black sheep. It was easier than looking at what I really lost. But you reminded me of something real. And painful. And true. Karen and I still talk. Slowly. Carefully. She told me not to write you. I'm doing it anyway. Because whether I like it or not, you were part of the reason I found my sister again. Don't confuse that with forgiveness. I'm not there yet. But I don't regret any of it. I read it 3 times. And then I deleted it. Not because I was angry. But because I couldn't carry it right then. I didn't want a maybe. I didn't want a philosophical reckoning. I wanted to go back to the moment before all of this started and do it right. And I couldn't. Around the 3rd week, Karen texted. Are you home Saturday? I stared at it for a full minute before replying. Yes. She didn't respond after that. But Saturday, she showed up. It was early afternoon. She didn't knock, just walked in, like she still lived here. Like she still belonged. She stood in the doorway for a beat too long, taking everything in. The couch, the half-dead plant by the window, the sweater I'd left draped over the chair like I thought maybe she'd wear it again. She looked tired. Older, somehow. I'm not staying, she said, but I needed to talk to you in person. I nodded. Do you want coffee? She shook her head. No. I want you to listen. I stood still, hands at my sides. She didn't sit. I've been going to therapy, she said. With someone who specializes in family estrangement. That's good. It's exhausting, she replied. But I'm starting to see that I spent a lot of my life pretending everything was okay so I could be loved. Her eyes locked on mine. That's what I was doing with you. I swallowed. I didn't know. I think part of you did. But you liked the version of me that didn't ask for too much. She wasn't wrong. I'm not that person anymore, she said. And I can't be with someone who needs me to be. The words hit like ice water. So this is goodbye. I asked, even though I already knew. She exhaled slowly. No. Not exactly. What does that mean? She stepped closer, not touching me. It means I don't know what this is. I don't know who we are now. But I'm not walking back into something just because it hurts less than walking away. I nodded. 1,000 emotions trying to crash through my face, and all I could manage was a whisper. I want to do better. I want to be better. I know, she said. But wanting isn't the same as doing. She handed me something, folded paper. I opened it and saw her handwriting. It was a list. What I need if we ever try again. Honesty. All of it. Even when it's ugly. Therapy. Individual. Together. No secrets. Not from me. Not from yourself. Space to have my own pain without needing to make you feel okay. Accountability. Not just apologies. I looked up at her. She was already walking toward the door. I don't expect answers today, she said. But if you want any kind of future, with me, or anyone else, you have to ask yourself who you really are when no one's watching. And then she left. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But something else happened instead. I sat down at the kitchen table and started writing. Not to her. To myself. A letter I didn't plan to send, but needed to write. It started with, I betrayed the woman I loved because I didn't know how to sit with my own emptiness. And from there, the truth spilled out. All the things I'd buried beneath ego and fear. The way I'd let myself believe I was a good man because I paid bills and remembered birthdays, instead of asking what love really required of me. The way I craved attention not because I wanted it, but because I didn't know who I was without it. I wrote for hours. By the time I stopped, the sun was down. The list she gave me was still on the counter. I read it again. And this time, it didn't feel like a demand. It felt like a lifeline. A few days later, I made an appointment with a therapist. One of the names Karen had scribbled on the back of a bill envelope months ago and forgotten. The first session was hard. The second was worse. But by the third, I was starting to see myself with less shame and more curiosity. It wasn't a fix. But it was something. Karen didn't reach out again for a while. Marissa didn't either. But something had changed in me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just trying to win someone back or make a mistake disappear. I was trying to understand why I'd made the mistake at all. I was trying to be someone who deserved forgiveness, even if I never got it. One evening, maybe 6 weeks after that last conversation, I got a text from Karen. Just 2 words. Still here. No punctuation. No context. But it was enough. Funny how 2 words can hold more weight than an entire apology. Still here. That was the message from Karen. A whisper in the dark. A reminder that even after everything, after lies and absences, betrayal and silence, some thread between us hadn't snapped completely. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I finally understood something I hadn't before. Some messages aren't meant to be replied to. Some are meant to be received. Felt. Carried. 3 days later, she showed up again. No warning. Just the sound of keys in the lock, and then her voice calling, "Are you home?" The word home hit me harder than I expected. She stood in the doorway in a faded green sweater I hadn't seen in years, one of mine, actually. One she used to sleep in. It hung off her like memory. Like something she didn't want to admit still fit. I stepped into the hall. Our eyes met, and neither of us looked away. She smiled, just slightly. "Can we talk?" We sat on the back porch, the autumn air cool and dry. The leaves were mostly down now, the trees bare. It was that in-between season, too cold for comfort, too early for snow. A time when everything felt stripped back. "I read your letter," she said quietly. I didn't ask how she got it. I'd left it on her side of the closet weeks ago, folded beneath a scarf I hadn't moved. "I wasn't ready to read it when I first saw it," she added. "But something made me pick it up yesterday." Her hands were wrapped around a mug of tea she brought herself. I hadn't offered. She hadn't needed me to. You told the truth, she said. The real truth. I tried. She turned toward me. It's not easy. Writing things down. Making yourself look at the parts that don't make sense. Or the parts that make too much sense. I nodded. I think that's why I always kept everything so surface. It was easier to just perform. She smirked, gently. You were always performing. Even when you were trying not to be. I didn't want to be that guy. You didn't want to admit you already were. That stung. But she wasn't wrong. I saw Marissa again last week, she said. I stiffened, but said nothing. She asked about you. What did you say? That you were trying. That I didn't know if it would be enough. But that for the first time, you weren't just trying to win me back, you were trying to figure out why you blew it in the first place. I am, I said. Trying, I mean. I know it might be too late. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, you know what's strange? I'm not even sure what too late means anymore. She told me about her therapy. About remembering things she hadn't thought about in years, small humiliations, casual cruelty from her mother, the way she'd learned to shrink herself for the sake of peace. I spent my entire 20s pretending that I didn't need closeness, she said. That I could build something on compromise and routine and still call it love. I winced. Don't look like that, she said. It wasn't all fake. There were real things, too. Real joy. She looked at me, eyes steady. But when I found out about Marissa, it wasn't just betrayal. It was like watching a mirror shatter. I swallowed. Because of what she used to mean to you. Karen nodded slowly. She was the first person who really saw me. When we were kids, I felt known in a way I didn't understand. Then I buried it. Buried her. I convinced myself I'd imagined it. And then I married you. The implication hung in the air. You think you married me to keep hiding? She didn't answer immediately. I think I married you because you made me feel safe. But I never asked if it was real safety or just absence of fear. That was worse somehow. The idea that I wasn't chosen for love, but for what I didn't do. For the way I kept her from facing herself. And then I went and cracked everything wide open anyway. She stood up, stepped down onto the lawn, staring out at the fading sky. I've thought about us a lot, she said. What we were. What we became. And whether it's worth salvaging. I walked over and stood beside her. I don't want to salvage anything, I said. I want to start again. Not like a reset. I mean, new rules. New honesty. No more pretending to be okay just because it's easier. She looked at me, arms folded across her chest. You think we could survive that kind of truth? I think it's the only chance we've got. A gust of wind blew past us. Leaves swirled along the driveway. Karen turned to me, her expression unreadable. You know what scares me? What? That part of me still loves you. My heart twisted. Why is that scary? Because love makes people stupid. And I can't afford to be stupid again. I didn't move. I don't want to be someone's second chance, she said. You're not, I replied. You're the only thing that was ever real. It came out too fast. Too desperate. But she didn't flinch. She looked down at her feet. Then said, I want to try. But I need to be allowed to walk away if I realize I can't do this. I need you to let me go, if I need to go. I will, I said, even though every cell in my body wanted to scream, don't leave me again. I'm not saying I will, she added. Just that I need to know I can. I understand. She looked up at me then, eyes glassy. And we take it slow. You sleep in the guest room. We talk. We rebuild trust, not just memories. Yes. And we tell the truth. Even when it hurts. Yes. She paused. Then finally, okay. It wasn't a grand reconciliation. There were no violins. No dramatic embrace. Just two people standing in a patch of dying grass, trying to decide if love was still possible after all the wreckage. And maybe that's what real healing looks like, not some big gesture, not some Hollywood scene. Just a quiet agreement between two exhausted people to try again with open eyes. Over the next few weeks, we kept talking. Dinners without TV. Walks without phones. Honesty without panic. Some days were worse than others. Some nights, we didn't speak at all. But the difference was, we noticed each other now. We listened. We asked questions we used to avoid. I told her about the therapy. She told me about her writing. Turns out, she'd started journaling again, something she hadn't done since college. We even wrote letters to each other, left them on the nightstand. Not love notes. Truth notes. Sometimes clumsy. Sometimes raw. But always real. One night, maybe a month after she moved back in, I came home and found her sitting on the porch steps with Marissa. It stopped me cold. They were laughing, actually laughing, about something. Their heads tilted back, shoulders relaxed, like they'd gone back in time and skipped over the years of silence and pain. I didn't interrupt. I just watched from the driveway, my chest tight with something I didn't recognize at first. Gratitude. Not for forgiveness. Not yet. But for the fact that some things, even the most broken things, can be rebuilt if you're willing to look directly at the mess. Later that night, Karen came to bed and didn't say anything. She just lay beside me, close enough to feel but not to touch. And then, very quietly, she whispered, "Thank you for letting me come back on my terms." I didn't say anything. I just reached over, gently, and took her hand. And this time, she didn't pull away.